Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Casey, hello. How are you?
Hey, man. Yeah, good.
Excellent. Well, it's been a long time, but thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so it's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, definitely. So for the listeners who are not as familiar with your work, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
Oh, that's very difficult. All right. Well, I mean, funny story. I was going to, a couple of years ago, I was going back to the U.S. I mean, now I'm living in Amsterdam, been living here for almost 12 years, and I was going back into the U.S. and I had just retired from dancing, and obviously retiring from ballet, a career that sort of really encompasses everything about you for so many years of your life. Well, I'm 41 now, and it's been my life for 30 of those years. Yeah, so I went back through Border Patrol, and the guy was like, oh, so, what are you doing back here in the U.S.? What are you doing living in the Netherlands? And he said, what do you do for a living? And I kind of looked at him and I thought, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing now. I just retired from ballet, but where I'm going next, I have no idea. So I guess, I'm still heavily involved in ballet. It's kind of my life. I don't ever want to leave it, but I don't really do any one particular thing full time, I guess. I'm concentrating now on mostly is Ballet Rising, which is my project to tell the story of how ballet is sort of heading into a new sort of golden era, I guess you can say. It's just rising in popularity and all around the world in places where you wouldn't imagine ballet would become a thing. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of a film producer, kind of a ballet teacher, kind of a nomad, I guess. That's the best way to describe me right now.
Sure. Excellent. So I do want to get into Ballet Rising in a second, but before I do, though, I want to start from the beginning. So I guess obviously ballet has and is a big focal point of your life and career. What made you first get started in ballet?
Yeah, my mom kind of talked me into it. I was an extremely introverted little kid. I was put in special class for kids with learning disabilities, and I was just basically a mute. I was afraid of everything. My mom was like, we got to do something, otherwise this kid he's never going to go anywhere. So she was like, why don't you try ballet of all things? And I was kind of, I don't know, scared of everything, but also open-minded at the same time. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a shot. And she asked me if I wanted to audition for the Nutcracker. And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds great, get up on stage and dance, and it sounded like so much fun. And there was 30 some odd boys that had auditioned that year, and they ended up cutting like 2 or 3 of us. I was one of them. So I was pretty depressed. And my mom was like, well, listen, if you want to audition for the Nutcracker and you want to make it again next year, why don't you try doing some ballet lessons, and it'll probably be really good for you because, ballet is good for so many different things. I took a few classes. I ended up really enjoying it. I sort of found a way to come out of my shell and start communicating with other kids, and sort of found myself basically. And just went from there. People were like, oh, you're talented, you can really do this. So it just started a thing inside of me, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So you got that initial start, and then, but beyond just enjoying it, you went full force and then went to the school for Ballet West. What was that like, and what really made you want to go, I definitely want to study this and make it the focal point of my career?
I think it was kind of the idea. Well, it was like a community of kids that I really enjoyed and felt connected with. We all sort of shared this passion for dance and theater and drama, and we worked really hard at it. So there was a lot of gratification I got from it. But it was also kind of the romanticism of traveling. Suddenly I realized there were these schools all around the world, and you could audition and they would take you, and sometimes they would give you a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we were pretty poor. My dad wasn't around very much. My mom had no education. She had 4 kids, and had a really hard time making ends meet. So for the idea for us to ever travel anywhere or attend a school or do anything was difficult. So suddenly I realized that I could really go places with this, and people were really encouraging me, saying, wow, you're not just a nice dancer. No, you could really, really become something. And I got a scholarship to a school in Philadelphia, and it was one of the first times I'd ever even left Salt Lake City, Utah. And it just opened up the world to me. And I thought, wow, I could go around the world and dance on all these great stages and meet all these exciting people from all these different countries and share in this art form that we all really passionately love. So it was a combination of different things, but that sort of romance of traveling the world kind of was a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So how did your career then evolve from your initial training to then ultimately, all of it would actually take me a very long time to name all the roles and places that you've danced at, which is absolutely phenomenal. But kind of like, how did you see your career evolving, and maybe what were some of the highlights that you've come across in your vast career?
My career started in New York in 1997 when I joined American Ballet Theatre, which is one of the biggest and most reputable companies in the world. It was always my dream company, since I was a kid and first decided I wanted to do ballet. It's the company where Baryshnikov danced and did all of his big famous roles. Mm-hmm. So of course for me that was like, okay, well that's where I'm going. So I started off with a bang like that. I was really excited, young kid right out of Utah. Well, I'd been living in D.C. for a little bit before that. Mm-hmm. But, living in New York was like, head blown.
Yeah.
Far cry from Salt Lake City.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was exciting, but it was also kind of sort of a bland time. The company was having a lot of financial difficulties. Didn't seem like we were doing a lot. We weren't touring many places. The rep was just it was great if you're a principal dancer, but for a young kid in the back line of the Corps de Ballet, it was pretty boring and uninspiring. So I left pretty quickly and went to Seattle to the Pacific Northwest Ballet, which is a smaller company, but it was really good. They were known to have a good rep and good facilities, and Seattle's a great city. One of my favorite cities in the world. And I came up quickly. I rose to the rank of principal dancer there. And I was kind of comfortable. I had a nice life. I was living large in Seattle, and I was getting I guess I was like ready to just spend my career there and live my life in Seattle when the opportunity to guest with the Dutch National Ballet in Amsterdam came along. Mm-hmm. And they said, listen, we need a big guy like you. You're strong, you're tall, you're handsome, you can dance, you can partner. And I had to think about it. I was like, this is difficult. I wasn't ready to suddenly move to the other side of the planet. Mm-hmm. But it was an opportunity I sort of really couldn't pass up. In the end, it was just like, challenge yourself, move to another country, join a bigger, the Dutch National Ballet is one of the biggest, most famous companies in the world. So it was really like, and joining it as their top male dancer was kind of like, it was a huge honor, Mm-hmm. So I moved out here. I did it. I said, yes, let's rock and roll. And it's just been an absolute wild ride ever since, that kind of really put me on the map, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I started guesting with all these other big international companies and doing all these big galas in all the top theaters around the world. It was just, it was an exciting time to say the least.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So there's a particular choreographer that stands out in your bio, and that's Bill Forsythe. And he probably sticks out to me just because when I was at Juilliard in the early 2000s, he came in and taught the dancers a routine. And then I met Jill, one of his proteges, and have worked with Jill at Harvard. And his style is so unique. it is, I love just going to his performances because it's like you're expecting at least something very untraditional. So what was your experience working with his style of dance versus, something more traditional that you've done?
Well, I think he, more than anybody, him and George Balanchine really opened my eyes, but I think more Forsythe. Unfortunately, I never got to actually work with him personally, which is kind of one of the few things I kind of look on my career and go, oh, darn, I've just heard the most amazing things about him as a person, so that was kind of unfortunate. But his ballet, In the Middle, Somewhat Elevated, was kind of a real a game changer in a lot of ways for the ballet world. I think it's probably his most famous pieces, probably one of the most famous pieces out there now. I think every ballet company on the planet does that ballet, and it just never seems to get old. But for me, it really opened my eyes as a student and as a young kid. I was pretty much focused primarily on just classical ballet. I had to do only, I was kind of really like, I want to do Swan Lake, Don Q, La Bayadere, those big classics, the contemporary stuff. I was a bit like, okay, whatever. That one really changed it for me when I did it. I just could not believe how incredibly difficult and hard it was, but how rewarding and satisfying at the end of it. It was the first time I ever came off the stage being so exhausted I almost threw up. But yeah, you go right back out on stage and you're like, this is amazing. Kind of a masochistic thing.
Right.
But yeah, that piece really just turned everything for me, and suddenly it opened my eyes to doing more neoclassical and contemporary. And from that point on, I've always been known as being an extremely versatile dancer. My former director here in the Netherlands, when I retired, said Casey kind of just did everything. I never said no to anybody. So yeah, that piece just kind of catalyzed it. And also the fact that so many people that I know very well loved Bill Forsythe, and they respect him so much. So that kind of was really neat too, just to know that he was also a really fascinating person as well.
So definitely. So tell me about Ballet Rising. What made you want to start something new after you retired, and why did you want to start Ballet Rising particularly?
Well, after I retired, I was kind of pretty aimless there for a little while, like what we were saying earlier. I just wanted to travel. That's all I really knew I wanted to do. I didn't want to leave the ballet world entirely, but I didn't know exactly where I belonged in it either. I didn't really picture myself. I love teaching ballet, but I never pictured myself as becoming like a full-time ballet teacher, Choreography always was really interesting to me, but I didn't want to, get stuck in the studio all day long and just choreograph ballets, There's also a big part of me that really wants to explore other things around the world outside of art and dance and ballet, economics and technology and science and history and philosophy and architecture. All these things are fascinating. And when you're a dancer, you're so focused on dance that I wanted to take some time and just sort of cut away and travel the world and learn all of these things. But as a means of traveling, I was saying, okay, maybe I can teach some ballet in several places, as long as I'm traveling. And I wanted to go to places away from the places I had traveled as a dancer. As a dancer, you're going to go to Moscow, Paris, London, San Francisco, Tokyo all the time. I've been to all these cities, tremendous number of times. I wanted to get away and go to, sub-Saharan Africa. I wanted to go deep into the Amazon, basically, wanted to go into the Himalayas. And so as I went to these places, I was like, I heard of a couple of ballet schools, and I thought, maybe I can teach, And I always got the same reception from these people. They were just ecstatic to hear from me and to hear that I would want to come and teach at their schools, and I was just realizing how disconnected these people are and feel, and yet how I don't know, just their passion for dance is pretty amazing. And I thought, why in a place like India or sub-Saharan Africa would these people be so fascinated by classical ballet? And it just made me realize that there is this enormous drive by people around the world